The text message glowed on my phone screen like a lit fuse. I want a divorce. 3 hours ago, while dusting the bookshelf in Robert's home office, I had found the offshore account statements hidden behind the family photo albums. $62 million he never mentioned during our 15 years of marriage. My hands trembled as I set my phone down on the kitchen counter. Outside, through the window of our Westlake Village home, sprinklers created perfect rainbow arcs across our manicured lawn. The gardener, Roberto, waved at me, unaware that my life had just imploded. I waved back, my smile as artificial as the flowers Robert had given me for our anniversary last month. I had suspected something was wrong for months. Robert's late nights at the office had stretched longer. His excuses grew thinner. The scent of unfamiliar perfume clung to his shirts when he returned home. But I never imagined he'd end our marriage with a text message while I prepared the lasagna he'd requested for dinner. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I'd managed our household to perfection while Robert built his investment firm. I'd given up my career as an accountant to support his dreams. We'd agreed to postpone having children until he made it. And now, according to the statements I'd found, he had definitely made it, without any intention of sharing his success with me. I took a deep breath and picked up my phone again. My finger hovered over the keyboard. Should I confront him? Tell him I knew about the hidden millions? My sister Diane had warned me for years that Robert was using me. He's building his empire on your sacrifice, she'd said. I had defended him every time. Instead of replying to his text, I opened my browser and typed in the name of the best divorce attorney in Los Angeles. If Robert thought he could discard me with a text message after 15 years, he had grossly miscalculated. I had 3 months of evidence meticulously documented in a notebook hidden in my greenhouse, the only place Robert never visited because of his allergies. The doorbell rang, startling me out of my thoughts. Through the peephole, I saw Maggie, my next-door neighbor and closest friend, holding a bottle of wine. "I saw your face through the window," she said when I opened the door. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I wordlessly handed her my phone with Robert's message still on the screen. Her expression shifted from concern to fury in seconds. "That coward," she whispered, pulling me into a hug. "Over text? After 15 years. I nodded against her shoulder, tears finally breaking free. That's not even the worst part. We sat at my kitchen island while I told her everything. The late nights, the perfume, and finally the offshore accounts I'd discovered. Maggie listened, her knuckles white around her wine glass. "I always knew he was selfish, but this is another level," she said when I finished. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I'm not going to let him get away with this." My phone buzzed with another text from Robert. "I'll be staying at the Peninsula Hotel tonight. We can talk tomorrow about arrangements." Arrangements. As if our marriage could be dismantled as easily as our Christmas decorations each January. As if 15 years could be packed away in boxes labeled past and stored in the attic of our memories. "You need a lawyer," Maggie said firmly. "Tonight." She was right. I needed protection. While Maggie made calls to her contacts, I went to my greenhouse to retrieve my notebook. The humid air inside enveloped me like a comforting blanket as I moved between the orchids and ferns I'd nurtured for years. Behind a large ceramic pot containing my prized monstera plant, I removed a loose brick from the wall and pulled out the leather-bound notebook. Inside were dates, times, names, and photographs. I'd started keeping track 3 months ago when I first suspected Robert was having an affair. What had begun as a sad chronicle of a failing marriage had evolved into something more damning when I accidentally overheard him on a business call discussing accounts that didn't appear in our joint financial records. As an accountant by training, inconsistencies in numbers set off alarm bells in my head. I'd started paying closer attention, making copies of documents I found in his office, noting account numbers and offshore bank names. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with this information, but something told me to keep collecting it. Back in the kitchen, Maggie was hanging up her phone. Good news. My cousin's college roommate is a divorce attorney. She's agreed to meet you tonight at 8 o'clock. I glanced at the clock, 6:30. That gives me time to make copies of everything. Maggie stared at me. You're taking this awfully well for someone whose husband just asked for a divorce via text. I shrugged. The marriage has been over for months. I just didn't want to admit it. I held up the notebook. And this changes everything. While I scanned pages from my notebook, Maggie ordered takeout. Neither of us had an appetite, but she insisted I needed to eat before meeting the lawyer. As we picked at pad thai, she asked the question I'd been avoiding. Do you think there's someone else? I nodded. Her name is Vanessa Reeves. She's the new marketing director at his firm. 28 years old. I found hotel receipts from weekends when he was supposedly at conferences. That bastard, Maggie muttered. It gets worse, I said quietly. Last week, I overheard him on the phone with a realtor about a beachfront property in Malibu. A $7 million house he never mentioned to me. Maggie's fork clattered to her plate. You think he's buying it for her? I don't know. But I do know he's been moving money into accounts I can't access, accounts I'm not supposed to know about. At 7:45, we drove to the attorney's office in Beverly Hills. Catherine Wheeler looked exactly like what I needed, sharp, focused, and slightly intimidating in her tailored suit despite the late hour. Her office walls displayed diplomas from Harvard and photographs of her shaking hands with various celebrities. Maggie's cousin speaks highly of you, she said, gesturing for me to sit down. Tell me what's happening. I handed her my phone with Robert's text, then slid the copies of my notebook across her desk. My husband wants a divorce. What he doesn't know is that I've discovered he's been hiding substantial assets offshore. Catherine's eyebrows rose as she flipped through the pages. How substantial? At least 62 million that I know of. She looked up sharply. And how did you come across this information? I'm a CPA by training. I gave up my career to support his. When things started feeling off in our marriage, I started paying attention to the finances. I hesitated. Everything in that notebook was obtained from documents in our shared home office or conversations I overheard in our house. Catherine nodded approvingly. Smart. California is a community property state. Assets acquired during marriage are generally considered joint property, regardless of whose name is on the account. She tapped on the notebook. This is exactly the kind of documentation we need. For the next hour, we discussed strategy. Catherine advised me not to confront Robert about the hidden assets yet. Let him think you're devastated but cooperating. Meanwhile, we'll be building our case. She leaned forward. Mrs. Harrington, do you want to fight for this marriage? I thought about the years I'd invested in Robert and our life together, the dreams we'd shared, the family we'd planned but never started. Then I thought about the text message ending 15 years with 5 words. No, I said firmly. I want what's rightfully mine. Catherine smiled, the kind of smile that reminded me of a shark circling prey. Then, let's make sure you get it. When I returned home, the house felt emptier than it ever had. I walked through each room, looking at photos of Robert and me through the years. College sweethearts who'd grown up together. Had he ever truly loved me? Or had I always been part of a calculation? The supportive wife who would help him climb the ladder of success. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the dark living room. Tomorrow I would begin the performance of my life, playing the shocked, heartbroken wife who had no idea her husband was hiding millions. I would cry in all the right places. I would act betrayed, but willing to be reasonable. I would give Robert exactly the divorce he wanted, except for the part where he walked away with everything. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He just checked in. Blonde, mid-20s with him. It was from the concierge at the Peninsula, a college friend who owed me a favor. So Vanessa was already by his side. They hadn't even waited until our marriage was officially over. Instead of anger, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. Robert thought he was 3 steps ahead, but he had no idea I'd been playing this game too. I typed a reply to his original text message. I'm shocked and heartbroken. We should talk face to face tomorrow. I'll be here all day. I added a crying emoji for good measure. Then I forwarded the concierge's message to Catherine with the caption, "Documentation continuing." That night, I slept in our bed for the last time. Tomorrow, I would move into the guest room and begin reimagining my life. My future suddenly seemed wide open in ways it hadn't in 15 years. Morning light streamed through the curtains I'd selected for our bedroom 3 years ago. I made coffee in the kitchen where I'd prepared thousands of meals for a man who ultimately didn't value my contribution to his success. The house felt different now, like a stage set I was seeing from behind the scenes for the first time. I checked my phone. No new messages from Robert. He was probably still asleep, with Vanessa curled against him in a luxury hotel suite. The thought would have devastated me a few months ago. Now it was just another piece of evidence. The doorbell rang just as I finished my coffee. Through the window, I saw a courier delivery truck in the driveway. I signed for the envelope and saw it was from Robert's attorney. He certainly wasn't wasting any time. Inside was a proposed divorce settlement. According to the document, Robert was generously offering me our current house, worth about $2.3 million, a lump sum of $1.5 million in my car. In exchange, I would make no claims on his business interests or any accounts solely in his name. I laughed out loud in the empty kitchen. If I hadn't found the offshore accounts, this might have seemed generous. Now it looked like what it was, an insultingly small fraction of what we actually owned together. My phone rang. "Catherine Wheeler, I just received the proposed settlement from Robert's attorney," she said without preamble. "I assume you've seen it too?" "Yes. He's offering me less than 5% of our actual assets." "Exactly. This confirms he's not planning to disclose the offshore accounts, which means we've got him." Her voice had the same shark-like quality I'd noticed last night. "How do you want to proceed? We could counter immediately, or we could play along for a bit while gathering more evidence." "Let's wait," I decided. Robert's always been overconfident. The longer he thinks I'm in the dark, the more mistakes he'll make. Good call. One more thing. I've assigned a forensic accountant to dig deeper into those account numbers you provided. The preliminary findings suggest there might be even more we don't know about yet. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table processing this information. More than $62 million? Just how much had Robert been hiding from me all these years? The sound of a car in the driveway pulled me from my thoughts. Robert's sleek black Mercedes pulled up, and I quickly wiped away my smile. Time to become the devastated wife he expected to find. I watched through the window as he straightened his tie and checked his reflection in the car window. He'd always been handsome in that polished, privileged way, salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, custom suits impeccably tailored. The sight of him used to make my heart race. Now I just noticed how practiced his movements seemed, like an actor preparing to step on stage. I moved away from the window and sat on the living room sofa, smoothing my robe over my knees. When the key turned in the lock, I looked up with what I hoped was a convincingly wounded expression. "Caroline," he said, standing awkwardly in the doorway of the home we'd shared for over a decade. "We need to talk." I nodded, letting my eyes fill with tears I didn't feel. "How could you end our marriage with a text, Robert? 15 years, and that's all I get." He had the grace to look slightly ashamed as he sat in the armchair across from me. "I'm sorry about that. It was cowardly. I just couldn't face you." "Because of her?" I asked softly. His head snapped up. "What do you mean?" "I'm not stupid, Robert. The late nights, the weekends away. I know there's someone else." He sighed, rubbing his hand over his face. It's not what you think. Vanessa and I, it just happened. I wasn't looking for it. They never are, I thought, but kept my expression carefully hurt rather than contemptuous. I received the settlement offer this morning, I said, gesturing to the papers on the coffee table. I wanted to be fair, he said, leaning forward. The house is yours, plus enough money that you'll never have to worry. Never have to worry. As if 1.5 million was enough for a lifetime of security in Los Angeles. As if that was a fair exchange for 15 years and $62 million. I gave up my career for you, I reminded him. We agreed I would support you while you built the business. We were partners. And I'm acknowledging that, he said, his tone taking on an edge of impatience. Caroline, this is more than fair. Most men in my position wouldn't be this generous. I let a tear slide down my cheek. Is she moving into the Malibu house with you? His face registered shock before he could control it. What Malibu house? I overheard you on the phone last week. The $7 million beachfront property. Robert's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. You've been spying on me? No, I said, letting my voice tremble. I just happened to overhear. You were in the kitchen. He seemed to relax slightly, buying my explanation. It's just an investment property. Look, Caroline, I know this is hard, but the settlement is fair. I suggest you show it to a lawyer if you want, but they'll tell you the same thing. I nodded, wiping away tears. I'll need some time. Of course, he said, standing up. Take a few days. But Caroline, his voice turned firm. This is happening. The sooner we can both move on, the better. As he walked toward the door, I couldn't resist one question. Were you ever going to tell me about the baby? Robert froze, his back to me. When he turned, his face was white. What baby? I took a gamble. Vanessa's pregnant, isn't she? That's why you're rushing this. His expression told me everything. I'd been right. The pieces clicked into place, the urgency of the divorce, the beachfront house, the hidden millions. Robert wasn't just leaving me for a younger woman. He was starting the family with her that he'd always postponed with me. How did you know? He asked hoarsely. I shrugged, not answering his question. How far along is she? For months, he admitted. But Caroline, you have to understand. This wasn't planned. It just happened. For months, while I'd been planning our anniversary vacation, he'd been creating a new life with someone else. The betrayal cut deep, even though I'd suspected it. Actual tears came now, and I didn't try to stop them. Please leave, I whispered. He hesitated, then nodded and walked out. As soon as the door closed behind him, I pulled out my phone and texted Catherine. Vanessa is 4 months pregnant, he confirmed. Her response came immediately. Perfect. This adds pressure on him to settle quickly. Let me know if he reveals anything else. I wiped my tears and stood up. In the kitchen, I found the lasagna I'd made yesterday still in the refrigerator. I'd prepared it for a husband who was planning to leave me, using a recipe his mother had given me when we first married. I took it out and dumped the entire dish into the garbage. Then I opened my laptop and began making a list of everything I wanted in my new life, starting with the truth and exactly what was mine. 2 weeks passed in a blur of lawyer meetings and silent dinners at home alone. Robert had moved most of his clothes to the peninsula, stopping by the house only when he knew I'd be out. We communicated almost exclusively through text messages, brief, business-like exchanges about practical matters. His attorney had called mine twice, pushing for me to sign the settlement. I was stalling, following Catherine's advice. Each day I delayed gave the forensic accountant more time to uncover the full extent of Robert's hidden assets. And what they were finding was staggering. It's not just $62 million, Catherine said during our meeting yesterday. We've traced closer to $90 million in offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Singapore, plus real estate holdings in 5 countries registered to shell companies. I sat in our sunny kitchen now, sipping coffee and reviewing the latest findings. The woman who had dutifully supported her husband for 15 years was gone. In her place was someone new, someone determined to fight for justice. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert. My attorney says you haven't signed the papers yet. Is there a problem? I smiled at his message. Robert had always believed I was financially naive, content to let him handle the money while I managed the home. For years, I'd allowed him to believe this, nodding along during his condescending explanations of investments and tax strategies. Little did he know I'd understood everything, including what he wasn't telling me. Just taking my time, I texted back. Want to make sure I understand everything. 3 dots appeared as he typed his response. The offer is more than fair, Caroline. Don't make this difficult. I set my phone down without replying. Let him wonder. Let him worry. Catherine had advised me to meet with him face to face again, to see if we could provoke him into revealing more information we could use. Men like your husband have fragile egos, she'd explained. If he thinks you're getting advice that might threaten his position, he'll try to reassert control. When he does, he might slip up. I texted Robert, can we talk in person? There are some things I don't understand in the agreement. His response came quickly. Fine. Dinner tonight? Mastro's at 7. Mastro's was one of the most expensive steakhouses in Beverly Hills, a power move on his part. He wanted to remind me of the lifestyle he provided, to intimidate me with wealth in a public setting where I couldn't make a scene. See you there, I replied. I spent the afternoon preparing carefully, selecting a black dress that was elegant but subdued. Nothing that suggested I was moving on or celebrating my newfound freedom. My makeup was minimal. My eyes slightly reddened as if I'd been crying. The grieving wife was what Robert expected to see. It was the role I needed to play a little longer. At 6:45, I pulled into the valet line at Mastro's. Robert was already waiting in the lobby, checking his watch impatiently. His eyes widened slightly when he saw me, and I noted with satisfaction that I still had the power to affect him. You look nice, he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. I turned slightly, making the kiss awkward. Thank you for meeting me, I said quietly. The maitre d' led us to a secluded table in the corner. Robert ordered an expensive bottle of Cabernet without asking what I wanted. Same old Robert, always assuming he knew best. So, he said after the sommelier poured our wine, what parts of the agreement are confusing you? I took a small sip of wine before answering. I've been thinking about what you said about being partners. 15 years is a long time, Robert. I supported your career every step of the way. He nodded, his expression carefully sympathetic. And I'm acknowledging that in the settlement, the house, the car, the money, it's all very generous. But what about your business? Shouldn't I have a stake in that too? After all, we built it together. Robert's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Caroline, my business has nothing to do with you. I'm the one who worked 80-hour weeks. I'm the one who took the risks. With my support, I reminded him. While I managed our home, our social calendar, your parents' care before they passed. We had an agreement, Robert. I gave up my career so you could build yours. We were supposed to be building a future together. He leaned back, studying me with narrowed eyes. Has someone been giving you ideas? Have you talked to a lawyer? I looked down at my plate, playing the role of the uncertain wife. Maggie suggested I should, just to make sure I understand what I'm signing. Robert relaxed visibly. Maggie was a high school teacher who knew nothing about high-stakes divorces. He didn't view her as a threat. Look, he said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. I fought the urge to pull away. I know this is hard, but dragging things out only makes it more painful for both of us. The settlement is fair. Any lawyer will tell you that. What about the Malibu house? I asked softly. That's a separate investment property, he said smoothly. Purchased through my business. It has nothing to do with our marital assets. Lie number 1. According to Catherine's investigation, The Malibu house had been purchased with funds directly transferred from one of the offshore accounts. Accounts filled with money earned during our marriage. And your other properties? I asked. The condo in New York? The villa in Lake Como? Robert's expression froze for a fraction of a second before recovering. I don't know what you're talking about. Lie number 2. Both properties were registered to shell companies linked to Robert. I heard you mention them on calls, I said vaguely. I thought maybe they were business investments. You must have misunderstood, he said, his voice harder now. Caroline, what are you trying to do here? I blinked rapidly as if fighting tears. I'm just trying to understand where we stand, Robert. 15 years is a long time to just throw away. I'm not throwing anything away, he snapped. I'm being more than generous. Most men in my position wouldn't give you half of what I'm offering. Most men in your position, I echoed. And what position is that exactly? A flash of uncertainty crossed his face. Was I fishing for information? Did I know something? I could almost see the calculations happening behind his eyes. I just mean financially, he said carefully. The business has done well, but it's not like I'm hiding millions somewhere. Lie number 3, the most brazen of all. Our server approached with our entrees, giving me a moment to compose myself. Robert had ordered the tomahawk steak, a showpiece meal meant to demonstrate his success. I'd chosen a simple filet mignon. As we ate in strained silence, I noticed he checked his phone repeatedly. Is everything okay? I asked. Fine. Just some business that needs attention. Vanessa? I asked, unable to resist. His eyes flashed with anger. Don't start, Caroline. That's not why we're here. When is the baby due? I pressed. August? September. Robert set down his fork with a clatter. This isn't appropriate dinner conversation. When would be appropriate, Robert? When were you planning to tell me you're starting a family with someone else? After our divorce was final, or never? Keep your voice down, he hissed, glancing around at nearby tables. I gave up having children for you, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion rising in my chest. Year after year, you said it wasn't the right time, that we needed to focus on your career first, that we would start a family when we were financially secure. I laughed bitterly. I guess we just had different definitions of secure. Robert's face had gone rigid. I never promised you children. No, you just dangled the possibility for 15 years while making sure it never happened. And now Vanessa gets the family I wanted with you. This isn't productive, he said coldly. If you're not going to discuss the settlement rationally, I think we're done here. I nodded, blinking back real tears now. You're right. I apologize. I'm just processing everything. His expression softened slightly. I understand this is difficult, but the sooner we resolve matters, the sooner you can move on with your life. Is that what you want from me, Robert? To move on? Of course, he said, an edge of impatience in his voice. I want you to be happy, Caroline. The settlement gives you the means to build a new life. While you build yours with Vanessa and the baby, I said quietly, with everything else you've accumulated during our marriage. Robert's eyes narrowed. What are you implying? I shook my head. Nothing. It just seems unfair that you get to start over with someone new, plus all the fruits of our partnership, while I get a fraction of what we built together. You get the house and $1.5 million, he said flatly. That's hardly a fraction. Of our total assets? It absolutely is. He stared at me for a long moment. Caroline, exactly what do you think our total assets are worth? I hesitated as if uncertain. I don't know exactly. Your business is very successful. I assume there's more than just the house and a small cash payment. Robert leaned forward, his voice low and controlled. My business interests are separate from our marital assets. The settlement I've offered reflects your fair share. If you're getting ideas about challenging that, I strongly advise against it. My attorneys will fight any claim on my business, and you'll end up with legal fees and nothing to show for it. I see, I said softly. So that's how it is. 15 years, and I'm just supposed to walk away with whatever crumbs you decide to throw me. Don't be dramatic, he snapped. $1.5 million is hardly crumbs. Compared to 90 million? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Robert went completely still. What did you say? I backpedaled quickly. I'm just saying, your business must be worth a lot more than that. The lifestyle we've lived, the properties, the vacations, it all adds up. He studied me intently, trying to determine if I actually knew something or was merely speculating. Finally, he seemed to relax, evidently deciding I was bluffing. Caroline, he said, his voice softening to the condescending tone he'd often used when explaining financial matters to me, you've never understood the complexities of my business. The company's value on paper isn't the same as liquid assets. Much of its worth is tied up in investments and projections. The settlement I've offered is based on what's actually available. I nodded, as if accepting his explanation. I suppose that makes sense. Trust me, he said, reaching for my hand again. I'm taking care of you, just as I always have. The rest of dinner passed in strained small talk. Robert paid the bill with the black card I knew was connected to one of his hidden accounts. As we waited for the valet to bring our cars, he turned to me. So are we good? Will you sign the papers this week? I need a few more days, I said, to make peace with everything. He frowned but nodded. Fine. But Caroline, don't drag this out unnecessarily. It won't change anything. If only he knew how much things were already changing. The next morning, I met with Catherine in her office. The wall behind her desk was covered with awards and recognitions. Top 50 most powerful women in law, California Attorney of the Year, most feared divorce attorney in Los Angeles. Today, all that power was working for me. How did dinner go? She asked, offering me coffee from a silver service on her sideboard. Exactly as you predicted, I said, accepting the cup gratefully. He lied about everything, the properties, the offshore accounts, all of it, and he threatened that his attorneys would fight any claim on his business. Catherine smiled. Perfect. Did you happen to record the conversation? I pulled out my phone and placed it on her desk. Every word. Excellent, she said, her smile widening. That will be very useful. California is a two-party consent state for recordings, so we can't use this in court. But it gives us valuable insight into his strategy and what he knows. He definitely doesn't think I know about the 90 million, I said. I slipped up and mentioned the amount, but he seemed to convince himself I was just guessing. Men like your husband can't imagine their wives being smart enough to catch them, Catherine said, making a note in her file. It's their greatest weakness. She pulled out a thick folder and laid it on the desk between us. Our forensic accountant completed his report this morning. It's even better than we thought. I leafed through the pages of bank statements, property records, and company registrations. The evidence was overwhelming, a systematic pattern of hiding assets that had begun just 3 years into our marriage. He's been planning this for 12 years, I said, my voice hollow. All this time I thought we were working toward shared goals, but he was already preparing to leave me. More likely, he was protecting assets in case the marriage ended, Catherine said. Men in positions of power often do this, as a matter of course. It doesn't necessarily mean he was planning to divorce you 12 years ago. Just that he was preparing for the possibility, I said bitterly, while letting me believe we were building a life together. The good news is he did a sloppy job, Catherine said, tapping the folder. He used the same shell companies repeatedly. He transferred funds directly from accounts that can be traced to marital earnings. And he did it all while domiciled in California, a community property state where everything acquired during marriage is considered joint property. So what's our next move? Catherine leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled in front of her. We counteroffer. Instead of signing his ridiculous settlement, we present our own terms based on the full marital estate, including all hidden assets. Will that force him to disclose everything? It will certainly put him on notice that we know more than he thinks we do. His attorney will advise him that if this goes to court, he'll be required to provide full financial disclosure under penalty of perjury. Lying to the court about assets is a serious offense that could result in criminal charges. What if he still fights it? He won't, Catherine said confidently. Men like Robert care about two things above all else: their money and their reputation. A public court battle would threaten both. The evidence of financial deception would damage his standing in the business community, and he'd still lose at least half of everything. Plus, there's Vanessa and the baby to consider, I added. A drawn-out legal battle would delay his new beginning. Exactly. Once he realizes you have him cornered, he'll settle. He might bluster and threaten, but ultimately, he'll pay to make this go away quietly. 3 days later, Catherine's prediction came true. Robert's attorney requested an urgent meeting to discuss the counterproposal we'd submitted, a document that meticulously outlined all the hidden assets and demanded half of everything, plus additional compensation for Robert's attempts to defraud me. The meeting took place in Catherine's conference room. Robert arrived with his attorney, Martin Goldman, a silver-haired man with cold eyes and a reputation for ruthlessness. Robert couldn't quite meet my gaze as we took our seats across from each other. "This counterproposal is outrageous," Goldman began, his voice clipped and hostile. "My client has already made a generous offer that exceeds what Mrs. Harrington would likely receive in court." Catherine smiled pleasantly. "I disagree, Mr. Goldman. Your client's offer represents less than 5% of the actual marital estate, as detailed in our proposal. In California, Mrs. Harrington is entitled to 50% of all assets acquired during marriage, including the approximately $90 million hidden in offshore accounts and the properties purchased through shell companies." Goldman's expression didn't change, but Robert's face had gone pale. "These allegations are completely unfounded," Goldman replied smoothly. "My client denies any hidden assets." "Then perhaps we should proceed to formal discovery," Catherine suggested, still smiling. "We can subpoena all financial records, depose Mr. Harrington under oath, and let the court determine the full extent of the marital estate." Robert and his attorney exchanged glances. "May we have the room for a moment?" Goldman asked. "Of course," Catherine replied. We stepped out into the hallway, closing the door behind us. "They're rattled," Catherine whispered. "Robert knows we have him. Goldman is probably telling him that right now." Sure enough, 10 minutes later we were called back in. Robert's expression had shifted from shock to controlled anger. Goldman's professional mask remained intact. "In the interest of resolving this matter amicably," Goldman said, "my client is willing to revise his offer. We propose $30 million plus the house, contingent upon confidentiality agreements and no admission of any wrongdoing." Catherine raised an eyebrow. $30 million is still far below half of the marital assets we've identified. Our counter is $75 million plus the house and Mrs. Harrington's vehicle. "That's absurd," Robert interjected, his composure cracking. "Where do you expect me to get that kind of money?" "From the same places you've been hiding it," I said quietly, meeting his eyes for the first time. "The Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Singapore." The color drained from his face. "How did you—" Goldman placed a warning hand on Robert's arm, cutting him off. "We'll need time to review your claims in detail." "Of course," Catherine said pleasantly. "But I should mention that our next step will be filing our counterproposal with the court, which would make these financial discrepancies a matter of public record. I imagine the SEC and IRS might also take an interest in some of these offshore transfers." Robert stared at me, recognition finally dawning in his eyes. I wasn't the naive, trusting wife he'd thought I was. I'd seen through him. I'd been collecting evidence, while he thought I was blindly supporting him. $60 million, he said abruptly. And the house. That's my final offer. Goldman shot him a warning look, but Robert ignored him. $60 million, the house, and your car. We signed today, and this ends right now. Catherine looked at me questioningly. $60 million was less than we'd asked for, but far more than I'd ever expected to get. More importantly, it was a victory. Proof that I hadn't been a fool all these years. I'd been a partner who deserved my fair share. With a confidentiality agreement that works both ways, I added. I won't discuss the settlement or our marriage publicly, and neither will you. Robert nodded tersely. Done. The paperwork took hours to prepare. By the time I signed the final document, the sun was setting over Los Angeles. Robert had barely looked at me as he scrawled his signature on page after page, formally ending 15 years of marriage and transferring $60 million to my control. As we stood to leave, he finally spoke directly to me. I never thought you had it in you. I know, I replied simply. That was your mistake. Outside Catherine's office, the warm evening air felt different somehow, lighter, full of possibility. For the first time in 15 years, I was answerable to no one but myself. No more carefully managing Robert's schedule, his moods, his preferences. No more sublimating my desires to support his ambitions. What will you do now? Catherine asked as we waited for the valet to bring my car. I smiled, thinking of the notebook hidden in my greenhouse, the record of Robert's betrayal that had ultimately become my liberation. I'm going to start with a very long vacation. Then maybe I'll go back to school, update my accounting credentials. You'd make an excellent forensic accountant, Catherine observed. You certainly have a talent for it. Maybe, I said, considering the idea. Or maybe I'll open that garden center I always dreamed about. The one Robert said wasn't prestigious enough for his wife. My car arrived and Catherine shook my hand. Whatever you decide, you'll do it on your own terms now, with the resources you rightfully earned. As I drove home through the streets of Beverly Hills, past the restaurants and boutiques where I'd played the role of Robert's supportive wife for so many years, I felt not triumph but peace. The anger and betrayal would fade in time. What would remain was the knowledge that I had survived, had fought for myself when it mattered most. At home, I walked directly to the greenhouse where my plants waited, the one space that had always been truly mine. I retrieved the notebook from its hiding place and flipped through the pages one last time. Dates, account numbers, overheard conversations, all meticulously documented in my neat handwriting. Then I took the notebook to the kitchen, struck a match, and watched as the pages curled and blackened in the sink. That chapter of my life was over. The evidence had served its purpose. My phone buzzed with a text from Maggie. How did it go? Are you okay? I typed back, better than okay. Dinner tomorrow? I'll tell you everything. Then I walked through the house that was now solely mine, turning on lights in rooms that would soon be redecorated to reflect my tastes alone. In the master bedroom, I opened the closet where Robert's remaining clothes still hung, occupying 3/4 of the space as they always had. Tomorrow I would call a donation service to take them away. For tonight, though, I simply closed the closet door and moved to the windows overlooking the garden. The sprinklers created perfect rainbow arcs across the lawn, just as they had the day Robert's text message had changed everything. Roberto the gardener had finished for the day, but soon he would be working for me directly, helping to transform the formal landscaping Robert had insisted on into the colorful, vibrant garden I'd always wanted. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of transferring Robert's generous settlement into accounts under my control. I would meet with a financial advisor recommended by Catherine, a woman who specialized in helping newly independent women manage substantial assets. I would start researching courses to refresh my accounting skills and maybe look at commercial properties suitable for a high-end garden center. But tonight, I would simply savor the silence of a house no longer filled with lies. I poured myself a glass of the expensive champagne Robert had been saving for a special occasion, and raised it in a toast to the woman I had become, a woman who had trusted her instincts, fought for justice, and won. To new beginnings! I whispered to the empty room. On my terms at last.